here is an excerpt from it. You'll have a book summary coming up soon also. As Huck spoke, Carrie burst into a loud wail and tore herself from him to go to Fanny. Fanny's jersey, bag, and scarf dropped to the ground, and in a moment she was crying too. Carrie gathered close in her arms, but how? Fanny kept saying incoherently because she was laughing and crying together. How? Then, as Hook still stood by the stone table, she freed one hand, holding it out to him. Hug, hug, at the pleading in her voice. Hug. Rob abruptly bent and picked up her things, dropped them on the table, and went to the balustrade where he lighted a cigarette. Only the way he flicked the ash continually showed he was in any way concerned. Oh, darling, he watched Fanny, her arm around Caddy, come across to the table. Before she reached Hook, there was an eruption from the back of the house. Shrill cries, voices, a babble of Italian, and round the corner came a big woman in a flowered apron. A woman of a big bust, big forearms, small snapping eyes, with behind her a pretty girl, big too, with red cheeks and a mane of curly black hair. She was wearing a black dress, a short white apron, and carried the grips and raincoats. They must have found them on the terrace, thought Hook, and found your disgraceful bag. Disgraceful bag, he said silently to Caddy, and indeed the big woman was panting out. Signor, signora, scrutin, dei turisti, dei ghitanti sono attratti, they get in. Malgrado tutti gli avvisi. So many notice. Behind them, still lazy, but with his beret now on the back of his head, came the man who had been asleep under the olive tree, and she turned on him. Good for nothing. When she saw Fanny's arm around Caddy, Hook by the table, the cries and scoldings stopped. Children, this is Celestina, said Fanny. Celestina and Giulietta and Giacomino, Celestina's husband. And she whispered, shake hands. But Caddy was too broken with tears, and Hook only gave a curt nod. Mio figlio, mia figlia, said Fanny, and from the balustrade Rob spoke in quick Italian. Celestina, when she understood, broke into cries of admiration. From England, England, she translated for Giulietta and her husband, from England, and taking in their dirt and tiredness. Poor childs. Fanny detached herself from Caddy and went to Hook, turning him towards Rob. Rob, this is Hook. The pride in her voice made Hook scowl. We are doing a book by Rumer Godin here. Rob was a man, Hook only a boy, and Rob with kindness held out his hand. But Hook kept his in his pockets. How do you do? He said, and Fanny could guess that Fanny could guess that his hands were clenched. For all his whiteness, tiredness, and tenseness, there was all Hook's old insolence in the way he looked at Rob. Hook was not tall for 14, but he looked tall until he stood beside a man. It was the way he held his head. The smallest of his thighs, waist, and shoulders. His shoulders were too slim, Darrell had said lately. It's time he broadened out, but Hook refused to broaden out. His head looked big because of his mop of hair. Darrell must have been at him to get it cut, which is why he wouldn't. Thought Fanny. Caddy could have told her this was true. So as I said, we're doing a book by Rumer Godin, the summary of which I will tell you about a little later. Giulietta murmured to Celestina, and it was true that Hook's skin was pink and white, gracefully pretty for a boy, almost like an apple blossom. How unfair that it shouldn't be that boy in a family to have the freckles. Caddy often said. Hook's eyes were a darker blue than Darrell's or Philippa's, and his had none of the blandness of hers. Philippa could tell lies so that everybody believed them, except her nearest and dearest. Hook only told them to be difficult or quip people. Caddy never lied. I'm not clever enough, she would have said. To her, it was an inconvenient defect. Now, in this scene with Rob and Fanny, she knew she had little importance. It was Hook who mattered. Violetta murmured to Celestina, beautiful. Standing on this alien sunlit terrace, Caddy looked small, stocky, and very English, a little English bullock, thought Rob. He alone had looked beyond Hook to her, until Fanny, quick to him, looked too. She saw the crumpled school dress and blazer, Caddy's dirty knees, wrinkled socks, and brown walking shoes white with dust. The locks of ginger hair, the Panama skew, face blotted out with tears. Not very attractive for Rob, Fanny thought, wincing. But here she was wrong. Rob knew real grief when she saw it, and watching Caddy, he began to sense what this journey had been and what lay behind it. Caddy had not a glance to spare for him or for Celestina or Giulietta, and in that torrent of feeling there was no anger or jealousy, only grief. What was more, she saw Fanny in Caddy, in the brown eyes, the hair whose ginger held a promise of Fanny's bronze, and just so Fanny often wept. Fanny often wept. The boy doesn't feel like this, thought Rob. Stop it, Hook said now through stiff lips to Caddy. Can't you stop? No, I can't, said Caddy. Put her to bed, said Hook. For God's sake, just because we have been up all night. So, like I said, we're doing a book by Ruma Gordon. It is a nice novel which has got a lot of nice reviews. Profoundly Moving is one of the reviews. Memorable is one of the reviews by Chicago Tribune. Stop it, Hook said now through stiff lips to Caddy. Can't you stop? No, I can't, said Caddy. Put her to bed, said Hook. For God's sake, just because we have been up all night. You both must go to bed. Fanny's own tears had dried and she was brisk. Baths first. You look as if you need some hot water. Have you had any food? We have had some sandwiches that we bought at Victoria and coffee this morning, said Caddy between sobs. Only coffee, nothing else? Couldn't buy anything in Italy. Caddy was becoming incoherent. We had a 10,000 lire note, said Hook, clipping his words as if he hated to speak at all. Couldn't change it on any of the stations. We changed it in Desenzano, but then we had to stay at the bus stop for the bus. Where in the world did you get a 10,000 lire note? From father. Father didn't know. You must be starving, said Fanny. Rob, will you tell Celestina? Hot baths at once. And no, I won't hear anything until you have eaten and slept. Hook, your eyes a bright red. This was a Fanny Rob had not seen. Brisk, dictatorial. Rob, will you tell Giulietta to take their things up and Celestina must make up two beds? Can Hook go into your dressing room or the day bed there? Are the sheets aired? Asked Fanny, her forehead wrinkling. Then a hot soup, omelets perhaps, and... Fanny, said Rob. There was something in his voice that made Fanny stop. He had not moved, but was sitting on the balustrade, smoking. Fanny? Yes, Rob. We were going out to dinner, he said quietly. Now? When Hook and Caddy? Now, said Rob. The Nettunos waiting. Celestina will look after them. We can look after ourselves, said Hook quickly, but Rob's Italian cut across that as he gave orders to Celestina. Si, said Celestina. Si, senz'altro. Her eyes were bright. She loved an occasion. Then Rob got up and put on his coat. She will show you to your rooms, he said to Hook, and the bathroom. The hot water runs very slowly, but see that your sister has a bath. Then there will be something to eat. But what sort of something? Asked Fanny. They were not expected, said Rob. They must take what there is. Fanny, I have ordered dinner at San Vigilo. They won't keep it if we are too late. But I must just take them upstairs. Very well, Rob looked at his watch. I can give you 10 minutes. Was it the children who had brought that echo of Darrell's voice? 10 minutes, then we must go. Upstairs, Caddy quite innocently let off the first shot as Fanny conferred with Celestina on the landing. Yes, Signoria Rina, Caddy in the big bedroom, the piccolo signor in the dressing room. You can keep your things with Caddy's hook, then you won't disturb Rob too much. Caddy, looking down at her mother's hand on the banister, the marble banister, said, "That's a new ring." It was a ring with a great dark red stone. A ruby? Wondered Caddy, set in a circle of diamonds. Behind it, Fanny wore a thin gold wedding ring. Caddy tried to think what Fanny's wedding ring had been like at Stebbings. She must have seen it hundreds of times, yet could not think. It was not like this one, Caddy decided. "And two new rings," she said. Fanny abruptly took her hand away. "But Gwyneth told us you had to wait 2 months," said Caddy. And because she had to know, she blurted, "Are you Mrs. Quillet now, or Mother?" On Fanny's first day in the villa, there had been a package on her dressing table. She remembered how she'd followed Violetta upstairs, powerful brown legs and strong back bounding up before her as Violetta carried the heavy cases. "Shake hands," Rob had whispered to Fanny, as this evening she had whispered to Hook and Caddy, "Shake hands," when Renato Mengini had introduced Celestina and her niece Violetta. Violetta had opened the bedroom door, carried the cases in, and stood back invitingly, but Fanny had not gone in. She had stayed in the doorway, drawing her gloves through her fingers. Come in," said Violetta. "It is your room." How attractive she is, Fanny had thought. Not pretty, but healthy, ripe, with that glowing rose-brown skin and those white teeth. In a few years, she would, this young Violetta, become like Celestina, worked into coarseness. Would Giulietta too marry Giacomino, about whom Rob had told Fanny? Perhaps she too was in love, but now Fanny did not want her. She had to be alone in this room. "Grazie," she said, which was only the only Italian word she had ever known. She had known then. Grazie, Grazie, and Giulietta had understood. "Prego." She gave Fanny her white smile and went out past her. In a moment she had shut the door and Fanny had walked slowly into the room, her heels clicking on the tiled floor, and sunk down on the dressing table stool. She was alone in their bedroom. Rob had scarcely looked at her or spoken to her since he met her at the airport barrier. He had brushed her cheek with his lipstick in her small case and waited impatiently, jingling the coins in his pocket while the porter put her luggage in the Mercedes. Driving, he had looked steadily ahead, driving too fast and jerkily. Again, he did not talk to her, and this neglect filled her with content. It had been the same after each of their partings whose anguish had augmented rather than lessened as they grew accustomed. So we will stop there, and this was the book for you, a book for you from Ruma Gordon. It is a very nice one, magnificent and dramatic and really powerful, as the New York Times had said. It is